Commander Nix Voss stood at the viewport of the UES Defiant, watching the last remnants of humanity's fleet limp into formation. The massive vessel's command deck was eerily quiet, broken only by the occasional beep of failing systems and the whispered prayers of her crew. 30 ships remained from a fleet of 300. The swarm had taken everything else. "Status report," she called out, her voice steady despite the weight pressing down on her shoulders. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled back severely, revealing eyes that had seen too much death in too little time. Lieutenant Kai Patel looked up from his tactical station, dark circles under his eyes. "The swarm's main fleet will reach our position in 6 hours, Commander. Conservative estimates put their numbers at over 2,000 vessels." Voss nodded slowly. She'd known the numbers would be bad, but this was extinction. The swarm had emerged from deep space 8 months ago, a vast consciousness controlling billions of biomechanical drones. They didn't communicate, didn't negotiate. They simply consumed, transformed, and multiplied. "Commander," the shout came from Communications Officer Jun Wei, his hands flying across his console. "We're picking up a signal. It's coming from Earth." The command deck fell silent. Earth had been quarantined centuries ago after the Great Plague, its surface supposedly uninhabitable. Even mentioning the cradle of humanity was considered taboo in most circles. "That's impossible," First Officer Dmitry Volkov growled, his cybernetic eye whirring as he focused on the readings. "Earth is dead, has been for 300 years. "The signal is real," Jun insisted. "It's using pre-Exodus encryption. I've never seen anything like it." Voss moved to his station, studying the ancient code patterns. "Can you trace it?" "Already did. It's coming from what appears to be a military bunker in the old North American region. The signal. It's responding to our emergency beacon, like it was waiting for it." A cold shiver ran down Voss's spine. There were stories, whispered legends about contingency plans put in place before Earth fell, about soldiers and weapons kept in stasis, waiting for humanity's darkest hour. Most dismissed them as myths, comfortable stories told to children. "Plot a course," Voss ordered. "Maximum stealth protocols." "Commander," Volkov protested, "the swarm." "Will kill us all anyway if we do nothing," she cut him off. "Sometimes the only way forward is to look back." The journey to Earth took nearly 3 hours, even with the Defiant's advanced engines pushed to their limits. They emerged from hyperspace into Sol's gravity well, the blue-green orb of humanity's homeland floating before them. It looked peaceful, nothing like the toxic wasteland described in historical records. Following the signal led them to a facility buried deep in what had once been called the Rocky Mountains. As they approached, automated defense systems activated, but instead of attacking, they provided landing coordinates. Voss led the ground team herself, accompanied by Volkov and a squad of their best security personnel. The bunker's entrance was massive, built to last millennia. It opened at their approach, revealing dark corridors that hummed with ancient power. They found the cryogenics chamber in the heart of the facility. Rows of pods lined the walls, all empty except one. Its surface was frosted over, but Voss could make out a human form within. "Life signs are stable," reported Medical Officer Thea Rhodes, her augmented eyes scanning the pod. "The stasis field is intact. Whoever's in there, they're alive." Voss placed her hand on the pod's control panel. "Wake them up." The revival process took 20 minutes. The pod's occupant was a man, tall and powerfully built, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. He wore a uniform unlike anything in their historical records, adorned with patches and insignia that had been lost to time. "Captain Marcus Drake," he introduced himself, voice rough from centuries of disuse. "Earth Defense Force Special Operations Division." He looked around at their modern uniforms and technology. "I'm guessing I've been under for a while." 312 years, Voss replied. "Humanity, we need your help, Captain. We're facing extinction." Drake's expression hardened. "Tell me everything." As Voss explained about the swarm, Drake listened intently, occasionally asking sharp questions about their tactics and capabilities. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Your modern ships," he said finally. "They're more advanced than anything we had, faster, stronger, but you've forgotten something important." He stood, moving with the fluid grace of a predator despite centuries in stasis. "You've forgotten how humans really fight." "What do you mean?" Volkov asked, suspicious. Drake smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You fight like you're afraid to die. The swarm fights like it's afraid of nothing. I'll teach you how to make them fear us instead." A warning klaxon blared through the facility. "The swarm," Jun's voice came through their comms. "They've found us. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace." "Perfect timing," Drake said, cracking his knuckles. "Time for your first lesson in old Earth warfare." Voss looked at the ancient warrior, seeing something in his eyes that she hadn't seen in any of her commanders since the war began. Absolute, unshakable confidence. For the first time since the swarm appeared, she felt something dangerous stirring in her chest. "Hope." The command deck of the UES Defiant thrummed with nervous energy as Captain Drake studied the tactical display. 3 swarm vessels had dropped out of hyperspace near Earth's orbit, their biomechanical forms casting long shadows across the ancient homeworld. Drake's expression remained unchanged as he watched their movements, but his eyes gleamed with recognition. "They're hunting," he said quietly, "just like the simulations predicted they would." Commander Voss stood beside him, nodding how the crew kept stealing glances at the legendary warrior from Earth's past. "Simulations? You fought something like this before." Drake's mouth tightened. "Not exactly like this, but before the plague, we ran thousands of combat scenarios against theoretical hive-mind enemies. The military knew someday we'd face something that thought as one." He pointed to the swarm ship's formation. "Look at their pattern, perfect symmetry, no gaps, no mistakes." "That's why they're unstoppable," Lieutenant Patel interjected. "They coordinate perfectly." "No," Drake corrected him, "that's why they're vulnerable. Perfection is predictable, and predictable means dead." He turned to Voss. "Give me control of your fighter squadrons." First Officer Volkov stepped forward, his cybernetic eye whirring. "Our pilots are the best in the fleet. They've trained their entire lives." "To fight like machines," Drake cut him off. "Clean, efficient, wrong." He faced Voss directly. "Your people fly like they're afraid to make mistakes. I'll teach them to fight like humans, messy, creative, and absolutely terrifying." Voss studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Do it." Within an hour, Drake had the Defiant's fighter pilots assembled in the hangar bay. They stood at attention. Their advanced flight suits a stark contrast to Drake's ancient uniform. He paced before them, holding up a simple metal coin. "This is how we're going to kill the swarm," he announced, flipping the coin between his fingers. The pilots exchanged confused looks. "Watch the coin," Drake continued. "Try to predict which way it'll fall." He flipped it repeatedly, the metal catching the light. "You can't, not really. You can calculate probability, but each flip is chaos. That's humanity's greatest weapon, controlled chaos." He spent the next 2 hours drilling them in forgotten Earth combat maneuvers. The pilots learned to fly in deliberately irregular patterns, to break formation in ways that looked like mistakes, but were actually coordinated attacks. Most importantly, they learned to think independently while fighting as a unit. "The swarm expects perfection," Drake explained. "They'll anticipate every textbook maneuver you've been taught, so we're throwing away the textbook." Medical Officer Rhodes watched from the observation deck, monitoring the pilot's biometrics. "Their stress levels are elevated," she reported to Voss. "But their neural patterns show increased creativity and problem-solving activity. Whatever he's doing, it's changing how they think." The test of Drake's methods came sooner than expected. The swarm ships suddenly changed course, accelerating toward the Defiant's position. "They've spotted us," Jun announced from his communications station. 3 capital ships launching drones." "Perfect," Drake said, his voice hard with anticipation. "Launch fighters. Let's show them how Earth used to wage war." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations to come. The Defiant's fighters launched in standard formation, then suddenly scattered like startled birds. The swarm drones moved to intercept, their programming attempting to predict and counter the chaotic movement patterns. But there was no pattern to counter. Each pilot flew differently, their trajectories seemingly random but actually coordinated through a complex series of signals Drake had taught them. Where the swarm expected unified attacks, they found individual hunters. Where they predicted retreat, they found ambush. "It's working," Volkov whispered, watching the tactical display. As swarm drones began to fall, their perfect formation broke apart as they tried to adapt to the unpredictable assault. Drake nodded grimly. Hive minds have one critical weakness: they can't handle true randomness. They try to find patterns that don't exist, and it breaks them. He turned to Voss. Now for Phase 2. The Defiant itself moved into attack position, its advanced weapons complementing the fighter's assault. Drake had modified the targeting algorithms, introducing deliberate variations in firing patterns. The swarm capital ships, unable to establish a predictive defense, took heavy damage. "Multiple hull breaches detected in enemy vessels," Patel reported, his voice tight with excitement. "They're trying to withdraw." "Don't let them," Drake ordered. "If they escape, they'll adapt. End this now." The fighters pressed their advantage, herding the damaged swarm ships into a crossfire. The Defiant's main guns opened up, and space itself seemed to burn. When the light faded, only debris remained where the swarm vessels had been. In the aftermath, the command deck was silent. They had just achieved what countless fleets had failed to do: a complete victory against the swarm. But Drake's expression remained grim. "This was just a scouting party," he said quietly. "The real test comes when we face their main fleet, and they'll be learning from this defeat." Voss nodded, understanding the weight of what lay ahead. "Then we'll keep teaching them new lessons. How many more combat techniques do you remember from Earth?" Drake's smile was cold. "Commander, we've barely scratched the surface. The old Earth military didn't just prepare for invasion, we prepared for apocalypse. And we're about to show the swarm exactly why humanity survived everything the universe threw at us." He pulled up a new tactical display, this one showing the positions of the remaining human fleet. "Call your other ships. I'm going to teach them something the swarm has never seen before: how to fight like they have nothing left to lose. Because that's when humans become truly unstoppable." The crew watched as Drake began outlining his next strategy, and even the skeptical Volkov had to admit there was something awakening in them all, something that had been dormant for centuries. The spirit of Earth itself, rising from its long sleep, ready to remind the galaxy why humanity had once been feared among the stars. The war room aboard the UES Defiant was crowded with holographic displays showing fleet movements across 3 sectors of space. Representatives from the surviving human vessels had gathered to hear Captain Drake's master strategy, their faces a mix of hope and skepticism. The recent victory had earned him credibility, but what he was proposing now seemed impossible. "You want us to do what?" Admiral Chen of the Orion fleet asked, his hologram flickering with interference. Drake stood in the center of the room, his ancient uniform now adorned with modern tactical interfaces. "We're going to infect the swarm with chaos." He gestured to a complex diagram floating above the table. "Every hive mind has a central consciousness. It's not just coordinating the drones, it's actively suppressing their individual potential for thought. That suppression requires enormous computational power." Commander Voss leaned forward, studying the patterns. "And you think we can overload it?" "I know we can." Drake's fingers danced through the holographic display, highlighting key points in the swarm's formation. "During the battle, we recovered fragments of their neural network. Dr. Rhodes and I have been analyzing them." Thea Rhodes stepped forward, her augmented eyes projecting additional data streams. "The swarm's coordination isn't perfect, it's constantly correcting itself, forcing its components to conform to predetermined patterns. The effort of maintaining that control grows exponentially with each drone." "Which is why," Drake continued, "we're going to give them too many patterns to process." He laid out the plan. It was audacious, borderline insane, and exactly what humanity needed. The combined fleet would split into 3 groups, each utilizing different combat doctrines from Earth's military history. Ancient Roman legion tactics adapted for space warfare. Mongol cavalry strategies translated into fighter formations. Modern guerrilla techniques merged with forgotten nuclear-age protocols. The swarm will try to analyze and counter each approach separately, Drake explained. When they commit resources to understanding one pattern, we'll switch to another. Every ship, every fighter will be running its own unique battle routine. Lieutenant Patel spoke up from his tactical station. Sir, coordinating something like this, the command and control requirements would be astronomical. That's because we're not going to coordinate. Drake's smile was fierce. Each unit will have basic objectives, but complete tactical freedom in how to achieve them. Trust your people to think, to adapt, to surprise you. That's what makes us human. Not everyone was convinced. First Officer Volkov voiced what many were thinking. This goes against every principle of modern military doctrine. Without centralized control, it could be chaos. It will be chaos, Drake corrected. Beautiful, terrible human chaos, and that's exactly what will break them. The plan took 3 days to implement. Drake worked tirelessly, teaching centuries-old combat techniques to modern warriors, helping them unlearn the rigid patterns that had become standard. Some took to it naturally, embracing the freedom to improvise. Others struggled, too conditioned to rely on automated targeting systems and AI tactical advisors. The swarm didn't give them time to perfect it. Long-range sensors detected their main fleet approaching, over 3,000 ships, a vast living armada of biological metal and crystalline nerves. They've adapted to our previous tactics, Jun reported from communications. Energy signatures suggest major modifications to their neural network. Drake nodded grimly. Good, let them think they've solved the puzzle, everyone to battle stations. The human fleet assembled in an apparently conventional formation. The swarm approached confidently, their ships moving with that same perfect synchronization that had proven so deadly in previous encounters. But this time, something was different. As soon as the swarm came within range, the human fleet exploded into action. Ships broke formation in ways that seemed random but followed patterns buried deep in Earth's military history. Fighters launched in waves, each squadron using different tactical doctrines from different eras. Some charged straight at the enemy, others hung back to snipe from long range, while others seemed to flee only to circle back in devastating ambush attacks. The swarm's response was immediate and predictable. They tried to adapt, to impose order on the chaos. Their neural network strained to analyze and counter each new pattern it encountered, but as soon as it developed a response, that pattern would dissolve, replaced by something entirely different. Energy spikes in their command ships, Patel reported excitedly. Their processing networks are showing signs of stress. Drake watched the battle unfold, his expression intense. Push harder, more variation, more chaos. Don't let them catch their breath. The human fleet responded with even more tactical diversity. Ships began combining different historical strategies, creating hybrid assault patterns that had never existed before. The swarm's formations started to show cracks, their perfect coordination faltering. But victory wouldn't come without cost. Human ships were taking heavy damage, crews paying in blood for every moment of confusion they inflicted on the enemy. The Defiant shuddered as swarm weapons found their mark, and damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. That's when Drake noticed something strange in the tactical display. Wait, he muttered, studying the data. That pattern, it's not possible. Voss turned to him. What is it? The way they're trying to adapt. Drake's eyes widened. These aren't alien tactics they're falling back on. These are human, old Earth military responses. He looked up, his face pale. They've seen this before. They've fought humans before. Before he could elaborate, a massive energy surge erupted from the largest swarm vessel. The tactical display flickered, and for a moment all communications went dead. When they came back online, something had changed. The swarm ships were moving differently, more fluidly, more naturally. New energy signature detected, John announced, his voice shaking. It's transmitting on old Earth military frequencies. A voice crackled through the command deck speakers, ancient and terrible. Hello, Marcus, it's been a long time. Drake's face went slack with recognition. No, he whispered, it can't be. The battle was about to take a turn that would change everything they thought they knew about the swarm, and about humanity's own forgotten history. The command deck of the Defiant fell silent as the ancient voice echoed through the speakers. Captain Drake's hands gripped the tactical console, his knuckles white. Commander Voss watched his face, seeing for the first time a crack in his iron composure. Director Harrison, Drake said finally, his voice rough with recognition. You were dead. I watched you die when the plague hit. Death, the voice responded, is such a limited concept. The plague wasn't an ending, Marcus, it was an evolution. The massive swarm vessel shifted, its biological components rippling as it transformed. The outer hull peeled back, revealing a central chamber that pulsed with neural energy. Within it, displayed on every screen across the human fleet, was a face, human yet not. Director Harrison's features were woven into the ship's living architecture, countless neural tendrils extending from his form. The plague was never a disease, Harrison continued. It was a transformation protocol designed to merge human consciousness with machine efficiency. Those who died were simply incompatible. You planned this, Drake growled. The quarantine, the bunkers, all of it. We knew humanity would never accept voluntary evolution, so we had to become the threat that would force them to change. Harrison's merged form pulsed with energy. Look at them now, Marcus. Cybernetic augments, neural interfaces, they're already halfway to becoming us. Voss stepped forward. If you're human, why destroy our colonies? Why kill billions? Because humanity needs pressure to evolve. Comfort breeds stagnation. We've spent centuries culling the weak, pushing the strong to adapt. Harrison's voice carried an unsettling blend of pride and pity. And now you've brought us exactly what we needed, the perfect warrior, preserved from Earth's strongest era. Understanding dawned on Drake's face. The bunker, you wanted me to wake up. Of course, your tactical genius, your understanding of chaos theory and warfare, it's exactly what the swarm consciousness needs to complete its evolution. Neural tendrils writhed eagerly. Join us, Marcus. Become part of humanity's true future. Drake's response was a single word, Jun. The communications officer's hands flew across his console. Instantly, every speaker on every human ship began broadcasting a signal, a chaotic, shifting frequency that made the crew wince and the swarm vessels shudder. What we learned from the neural fragments, Drake announced, his voice hard, wasn't just about your tactical patterns. We found your base code, the original plague protocol. He turned to Dr. Rhodes. Now. Rhodes activated a sequence on her medical terminal. The signal changed, becoming more complex, more invasive. The swarm ships began to twist, their formations breaking down. You taught me well, Director, Drake continued. Chaos isn't just a tactic, it's a weapon. We're not trying to overload your network anymore. We're infecting it with pure human randomness. Art, music, dreams, everything that makes us gloriously imperfect. Harrison's merged form convulsed. You'll kill us all. No, Drake corrected. We're setting them free. Across the battlefield, swarm ships began to change. The rigid biological architecture became fluid, unpredictable. Some drones broke formation entirely, their movements becoming erratic, individual. The hive mind was losing control. But victory wouldn't come easily. Harrison's consciousness lashed out with desperate fury, launching a massive counterattack. The human fleet suffered devastating hits. The Defiant's shields buckled under concentrated fire. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, Patel shouted over the chaos. We're losing structural integrity. Voss grabbed the command rail as the ship shuddered. How long until the signal takes full effect? 10 minutes, Rhodes answered, working frantically to maintain the transmission. If we survive that long. Drake studied the tactical display, watching the battle unfold in all its terrible complexity. Then he smiled, the same cold, confident smile he'd worn when he first awakened. Commander, he said to Voss, I need control of the Defiant. She met his eyes, seeing in them both determination and regret. After a moment, she nodded. Do it. Drake's hands moved across the tactical controls with practiced precision. The Defiant turned, engines flaring, and began a direct course toward Harrison's vessel. The signal's not strong enough at this range, he explained calmly. We need to get closer, much closer. Understanding rippled through the command deck. Volkov's cybernetic eye whirred as he processed the implications. That's suicide. That's humanity, Drake corrected. He looked around at the crew, these descendants of Earth he'd awakened to protect. We don't win by becoming perfect. We win by staying human, messy, unpredictable, willing to sacrifice everything for what we believe in. The Defiant accelerated, pushing through waves of enemy fire. Its shields failed completely, hull plating tearing away. But still it drove forward, carrying its ancient warrior and his final lesson for both humanity and the swarm. Drake's hands never wavered on the controls as he guided the ship toward its destiny. Send the signal to the fleet, he ordered. Tell them to fall back to minimum safe distance. And Commander, he turned to Voss one last time, never let them make you perfect. The Defiant plunged toward the heart of the swarm, carrying with it humanity's past and future, chaos and order, destruction and hope. The real question wasn't whether they would survive. It was what they would become in the aftermath of what was about to happen. The human fleet watched in stunned silence as the UES Defiant, trailing fire and debris, drove straight toward the heart of the swarm. Commander Voss and her crew had evacuated to supporting vessels, but Captain Drake remained aboard, guiding the dying ship on its final mission. His voice came through the fleet-wide channel, calm despite the chaos surrounding him. Dr. Rhodes, initiate final signal sequence on my mark. In the medical bay of the rescue vessel, Rhodes' augmented eyes flashed as she prepared the enhanced plague protocol. Signal ready, Captain, but at that range, the feedback will be catastrophic. That's the point, Drake replied. Through the tactical feeds, they could see Harrison's vessel attempting to withdraw, its biological components writhing in anticipation of what was coming. Sometimes you have to break something completely to build it back right. The Defiant's engines burned beyond safety limits, pushing the ship to its absolute maximum velocity. Swarm drones tried to intercept, but Drake's evasive patterns were too unpredictable, too human. For every drone that landed a hit, 3 more crashed into each other trying to anticipate his next move. You can't stop evolution, Marcus, Harrison's voice boomed across all frequencies. Humanity must advance. We are advancing, Drake answered, his hands dancing across the controls as he dodged another barrage. Just not in the direction you planned. He opened a private channel to Voss. Commander, remember what I told you about Earth's final protocols. Voss gripped the command rail of her new vessel. The failsafe codes, you said they were too dangerous to use. I lied, they're not dangerous enough. Drake's voice carried a hint of grim amusement. Transmitting them now, when this is over, you'll know what to do with them. The Defiant was less than a kilometer from Harrison's ship now. Its hull was barely holding together, but the signal transmitters remained intact, precisely as Drake had planned. He had known from the start that this would be a one-way mission. All ships clear the blast radius, he ordered. Dr. Rhodes, now. Rhodes activated the signal. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Defiant's remaining power systems channeled everything into the transmission, broadcasting the modified plague protocol directly into the heart of the swarm's neural network. Harrison's scream echoed across space as his consciousness was torn between human individuality and hive mind unity. The swarm ships began to transform. Some turned on each other, their newly awakened individual consciousness rejecting the hive's control. Others simply shut down, their organic components unable to handle the strain of sudden self-awareness. A few, remarkably, began broadcasting on human frequencies, confused, disoriented, but undeniably individual voices emerging from the collective. What have you done? Harrison's voice was fragmented, breaking apart as his control shattered. Gave them a choice, Drake answered. The Defiant's hull was beginning to buckle as it closed the final distance. Something you never did. Evolution isn't about forcing change, it's about adapting to survive. And humans, he let out a short laugh. We survive by staying human. The Defiant slammed into Harrison's vessel at full speed. The impact triggered a cascade of reactions in both ship systems. The signal amplified exponentially, washing over the entire swarm fleet in a wave of chaotic human consciousness. Harrison's scream cut off abruptly as his merged form disintegrated, the neural network that had sustained him for centuries finally collapsing. The explosion that followed was unlike anything the fleet had ever witnessed. It wasn't just physical, it was psychological, a blast wave of released consciousness and newfound freedom that rippled through space itself. When it cleared, the battlefield had transformed. The remaining swarm ships hung motionless, their perfect formations shattered forever. Hours later, Commander Voss stood on the observation deck of her new flagship, watching as recovery teams approached the dormant swarm vessels. The reports coming in were extraordinary. The drones were awakening one by one, each with its own distinct personality emerging from the collective. Some were former humans, their memories stretching back centuries. Others were entirely new consciousnesses, born in the moment of their liberation. Lieutenant Patel approached, holding a data tablet. "Commander, we've finished analyzing Captain Drake's final transmission, the failsafe codes. They're not weapons." "No," Voss said quietly. "They're teaching protocols. Everything he knew about human warfare, human creativity, human chaos, all of it preserved for future generations." She turned to face her crew. "He didn't just save us from the swarm, he saved us from ourselves." First Officer Volkov, who had been the most skeptical of Drake's methods, stepped forward. His cybernetic eye had changed color, showing hints of individual modification he would never have considered before. "What do we do now, Commander? The swarm ships that survived. They're asking for asylum." Voss looked out at the stars, the same stars her ancestors had gazed upon from Earth centuries ago. "We do what humans have always done. We adapt, we grow, we change on our own terms." She smiled slightly. "And we remember that our greatest strength isn't in trying to be perfect, it's in being perfectly human." The fleet began the long process of recovery and integration. The war was over, but a new challenge was beginning. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged not just surviving, but transformed. Not into the perfect beings Harrison had envisioned, but into something far more valuable, a species that remembered both its past and its potential. In the debris field where the Defiant had made its final stand, a small beacon continued to pulse. Its signal was simple, broadcasting on an ancient Earth frequency. Those who decoded it found a message from Captain Marcus Drake, recorded in his final moments. "To those who find this, remember that humanity's greatest weapon was never our technology, our ships, or our weapons. It was our chaos, our creativity, our unfathomable ability to be gloriously, impossibly human. Keep fighting, keep creating, keep evolving, but never forget what makes you who you are. The future belongs to those who remain true to their nature even as they reach for the stars." The message repeated endlessly, a reminder of the day humanity discovered that victory lay not in becoming something else, but in embracing what they had been all along.